So I had big plans for 2020. The Great Quarantine gave me the potential to finally clear out that backlog of Steam games that I had built up throughout the years. Finally, some hidden gems that I had allowed to accumulate so much dust were finally gonna get to see the light of day. Then, my buddy convinced me to download World of Warcraft, and so sorry other games, my schedule has been completely booked for the rest of the year. So I'm no stranger to WoW. I remember seeing commercials of Mr. T throwing Mohawk-infused grenades at people on the television during my Saturday morning cartoons.
Some smack-talking fool's been saying Mr. T can't change the world of Warcraft. He ain't no computer hacker. Well, answer me this, suckers. How do you explain the Mohawk grenade?
But I had never made a serious attempt at playing the game. I remembered playing the trial up to level 20 on an undead character, but that must have been on my dad's Blizzard account or something because I can't find that guy anywhere. Anyways, my buddy had jumped back into playing it recently and was telling me about this experience boost that had just gotten extended until the pre-patch for the new Shadowlands expansion. I took this as the perfect opportunity to give the game the good old college try. So, I downloaded it and hopped in. And I knew right off the bat that I wanted to be a mage. One, because mages are one of my favorite fantasy archetypes, and that's second only to battle mages. And two, because mages are all DPS, and I figured DPS would probably be the easiest thing to get into as a newer character. So I let my friends stand over my shoulder as I perused through the different character races. I wanted to pick a human as they, of course, are the race that I have the most real-life experience with. But upon looking through the other options, I finally settled on the Draenei, as I thought the idea of playing a space goat sounded pretty cool. So I quickly went through the limited options available to actually customize my character, give him a face, give him some facial hair, in this case a weird space facial hair thing, tentacles, and gave him the first fantasy name that popped into my head and started my adventure. Now the game begins with a nice in-game cutscene setting up the current situation at hand and letting me know about a disaster, a distant war between light and dark, and how important my place was in making sure my people were ready for it. Then, I'm tasked with talking to someone, then killing someone, and then talking to someone, and killing someone, and talking to someone, and killing someone. It was around the end of this third cycle that I began to ask myself, where's the story here? The same question to which I asked my friend, and he told me this zone was full of just a bunch of low-level, super old quests, and that I should just try and fly through there in order to get to the newer, more story-driven stuff. And so I did. I started rushing through the quests, just trying to get out of the starting area. However, I wasn't having very much fun, and I was having a hard time. I died a lot in this area, a lot, but it was on the many walks back to my corpse where I started actually reading my quest log, and it was there that I found how the stories are told in World of Warcraft, at least how they were told all these years ago. So it was at this point I decided that even if the story was old, I wanted to know it. Unfortunately, the late coming of this realization does mean that I didn't take a lot of video of the Draenei starting location and quest, even though the Exodar was a pretty cool ship. All in all though, the opening story was nice, and though there weren't a lot of very memorable moments, the over-encompassing story of a crashed ship slowly leaking radioactivity into the environment was interesting and fun to play in. After I finished the starting area for the Draenei, I started doing some dungeons, and even though I was a living embodiment of I don't know who I am, I don't know what I'm doing, all I know is that I must kill, I still had a fun time, and it was really my first time playing with other people, even if nobody said anything the entire time in chat. After a few more dungeons, I found out about the achievements for doing story quests in different zones, and so with the help of Wowhead and the addition of a few new add-ons, I started tackling some zones in order to get some story in and level up as well. While this was fun, there still really wasn't any overarching story or giant evil boss I needed to defeat. And I both liked and disliked this. Coming from playing a bunch of story-based games at the beginning of the year, where you are the one and only all-powerful being who saves everyone from everything, to this, where you were just one person with your own story, was a weird change of pace. I needed to get used to the fact that I wasn't anybody super important in this world yet, and yeah, I could throw a frostbolt around, but so can everyone else here. I wasn't important, and it was freeing. It gave me the excuse to go wherever I wanted, just because I thought the grass and the trees looked cooler in that area, and as I was riding by I noticed the beginning of a storyline, so I would just jump in. All in all, during my leveling from 1 to 60, I only stopped in a few zones. I went from the hinterlands to the eastern plaguelands, then over to the western plaguelands, completing every story quest along the way. When I needed to get from zone to zone, I would always call on my trusty buddy and his 2-person mount to fly me to the next zone, which he did an amazing job of, by the way. I would definitely give him a 5-star rating on Uber. While questing, I would have to say that hands down the best questline that I did, and the one that I remember the most, was the Eastern Plaguelands questline. Traveling across the Plaguelands in a caravan, listening to the banter between characters, stood out to me in such a different way than anything else beforehand. This wasn't a quest log that I read through, killed a bunch of bad guys, and then read another quest log to turn in. There was character development, with Gidwin running off and trying to prove that he was a better paladin than Terranar. Then Terranar coming to that realization and having to rescue Gidwin at the end. And to top it all off, the end of the questline had another in-game cutscene. This one wasn't narrated, I still had to read text bubbles, but it was still miles better than any other questline I had seen since then. This gives me high hopes for the expansion content and how they deliver their storylines in the later years. Speaking of expansions, it was almost time for me to start diving into them. After completing the aforementioned zones, I was level 58 and I managed to ding 60 while doing my random daily dungeon. Before I could make my decision on which expansion to go with, however, I first needed to go visit the Flight Master and learn how to fly, something that I had been looking forward to since level 1. Something about flying around the world of Warcraft was just so special to me. Being able to see the vast world with its ever-changing landscapes under my wings was just a magical experience, and the flight speed was just slow enough that it made me take it all in as I went. After flying around Stormwind for about 10 minutes, I decided it was time to choose the first expansion I would be doing. I took some advice from good old Buddy Pal again and decided to go with Wrath of the Lich King, as he said the story was delivered in a better way than in the Burning Crusade, and it also had the powerful addition that Wrath of the Lich King had a better and more diverse environment to explore. So I took that advice to heart, boarded a boat, and prepared for the next step of my journey.